All right, and now the dun 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 dun, much awaited shading and color part of our 1 point perspective surrealism drawing. So this is my surrealism drawing that has the 1 point perspective parts in it. So if you've been following along, especially with that last video that I put out, you can see that it's a combination of both of those things put together. So the weird things like my wilting flowers and these weird things getting shot out from back here into my like very geometric shaped like trapezoids and diamonds and triangles that are falling from the sky and just kind of weird stuff like what's going on. That's the whole idea of surrealism. So as you can see, some of my areas I've already started to trace over with a black Sharpie. You don't have to do this. This is something that I'm choosing to do because I want to be able to have like those like really outlined edges. If you choose not to do that, again, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to. So what are some of the other options that you have as far as adding shading and color? So obviously you can see with this one, I've already started working on it with pencil. You can also use colored pencil with it. There's options if you have a thicker paper that you've been using that you could do some things if you have watercolor at home. But those, that's a lot of times like kind of up to whether or not you have those things at home. You don't need to go out and get anything special for this. And I just went over my line where I shouldn't have. That's why you have to be really, really careful. It's a good idea when you are drawing over your lines to turn your paper. I was a little distracted there and I did not do that. And so I kind of went over my line there. We're just going to like ignore that, pretend like it's perfectly fine. So you can see I make mistakes too. So you're going to trace over again. If you want to, you can trace over your lines. I'm going to add these cracks in here to make it look like when these like cylinders got shot into these big geometric straight edged forms that it cracked them, like maybe they were made out of cement or something like that. So what you are going to do then, once you have this drawn out, and again, like I said, you don't have to trace over your edges. That's just something I'm choosing to do. You can instead just go straight from working with pencil that you drew it with to working in either pencil and or, you notice I said and or, working with colored pencil. So working with pencil, I'm going to start out with some of the basic shapes. So for example, I'm going to shade this guy back here because it's already pre-traced. And when I'm doing this, I'm going to think about where is my light coming from. So maybe I want my light coming from here and kind of radiating out. Like maybe it's some kind of like, I don't know, some big explosion or something that these things are flying out from. So that means that things like on this side are going to be lighter and things on the opposite side are going to be darker. So I'm going to really lightly shade the edge of this. Okay, so I'm going to use the side of my pencil and really lightly shade in here. Okay, we've done some of this already with some of the artwork that we did previously with our symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial designs. So you know like a lot about shading already. And then on this side, I want to shade it darker. When I shade, and this is where I can erase, when I shade one side darker and one side lighter, and especially if I make sure that I'm consistent with the sides that I shade, it's going to show people, first of all, what direction the light is coming from, so they can see that the light is coming from there. And it's also going to help to make your forms, like my trapezoid guy who's sitting here in the ground, impaled into the ground, look more three-dimensional. Okay? If I shaded this guy so it was all the same shade, it does not look dimensional. It ends up making it look flat. Okay? Now you see that because this is a flat side, I'm shading it all solidly the same value. Same thing over here. This is a flat side, so I'm shading it all the same value. Now we do the same thing with this one over here where this would be really light. And then this side would be, again, since it's away from the light, it would be darker. But of course I'd want to do that better. And since I'm already started with the Sharpie, I want to make sure I finish that before I do that. Okay, so what about here? I'm going to actually erase this because this is a really good one to use. So again, light's coming from here. That means the light's going to mostly hit like right here on the top. So I'm going to actually, because this is rounded and I want to make it look rounded, if I shade it just one solid value, this is not going to look rounded. This is going to look flat. Okay, you kind of see that, how it looks just like a flat, a flat piece rather than like a cylinder. To really make it look like a cylinder, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shade darker along the sides, and then I'm going to fade it. Okay, you can do a little bit of like dark along the side and then kind of pull the shading out a little bit with your finger. But a lot of times I just like using my pencil to make it do that. Okay, so I just like pressing in a little bit harder along the edges and then easing up on it as it goes towards the center. Okay, I could even use my eraser and actually have my eraser as a tool to lighten up the center. Okay, so same thing out here. I want this to be darker here on this side. And I want it to get lighter as it comes around the cylinder. Because remember, again, this is a cylinder. It's supposed to look rounded. Okay, so you see how that looks rounded? And then I can kind of clean up edges like that. On the inside, because, you know, my light would be kind of blocked, okay? If there's a light coming from the inside, obviously I'd want this to look really light on the inside, but I want this to look dark on the inside. Like that. And then this ridge around the outside edge here, I want it to be really dark because that's on the opposite side from the light. It's on the front of the form and the light is coming from the back of the form. So I want this to be really, really dark in here. So I'm going to really press in. So this is what you can do if you have just pencil that you're using. You can use just pencil straight up on this entire thing. Just keep in mind that you can add other things like textures. Like I could go in here and add some texture. I could shade this in so that it's really light back here and maybe gets darker as it comes forward. So I could have this get darker as it comes forward. Like this. Notice that I'm trying to keep my pencil going in the same direction too, unless I want to use some of that kind of cross hatching, which I think we've talked about the hatching and the cross hatching where you can cross over. Okay. Notice I'm not being too careful about staying inside the lines because I can always go back, especially if I've done some tracing over a Sharpie, which I didn't on this one, so I'm being really careful. But I can go back in here and kind of erase out and fix it. Okay. And again, you can smudge this out a little bit if you wanted to kind of get rid of some of that lining and texture. You can kind of go in circles and do that and smudge it out a little bit. All right. So, and then like I said, I would fade this till lighter as it goes back because it's getting back towards that lighting source. Okay. If you choose to use color, then you have a couple options. You can either add color to this, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that, or you can actually just use color. Okay, so I'm going to actually pull this one off for now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this one over. Okay, this one has like some different sides here. So say for example I decided that I wanted this guy to be a green for whatever reason. Then what I would do is I would again decide where is my light coming from. Say for example our light's still coming from like back over like here, maybe up above and back here. So I want the tops of things, since it's kind of coming from above, to be the lightest. I would probably want these to be second because, you know, when it's coming from above here, there's still some light reflected on the sides, though not as much as on the top. And then the fronts be the darkest. So when I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start out with my lightest shade. And I'm going to actually color in this whole entire thing. Now notice on this one that I did not do any tracing with Sharpie. So I'm going to have to be really careful to make sure that I have my values really, really noticeable, like where the sides end and where the next side starts. So again, I'm going to color in this whole entire thing. Whole entire thing is getting colored in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to choose, rather than using the same colored pencil, I'm going to choose some other colored pencils to use along with this color pencil to make my darker sides darker. So when you do that, you generally are going to want to use colors that are near each other on the color wheel. That means that they're related colors. So this is a yellow green. This is apple green. Apple green is a yellowy green. So I'm going to want to, for my darker areas, go darker with my value. So that means that I'm going to want to choose a darker color. And when we go from dark to light, obviously white is the darkest, or is the lightest, sorry. It's the lightest. And then yellow. Then it goes to green, and then it goes to, oh, and I'm going the wrong direction. It goes to orange. There we go. And then it goes to red. Okay. So this is yellow, and this is orange, and this is red. And then there's kind of a line because it flips over, and this one actually turns, the next light, darkest color after these is green, and then blue, and then purple, or sometimes we call it violet. And then, of course, the last darkest value would be black. Okay, so looking at this being kind of a yellow-green, it's going to be kind of like in between kind of like here and in here, because obviously green is over here, okay, and yellow is over here, okay. So, and our color wheel goes from yellow to yellow-green to green to blue-green to blue, okay, to blue-violet or blue-purple, to violet or purple, to red-violet or red-purple, to red-orange, to orange, and then to yellow-orange, and then back to yellow again. So this is the order of our color wheel. So here's my yellow-green. I could go with something like green. I could even go with maybe a blue-green. But I want to stick within those first colors because I want to make sure that they're related to each other. Okay, if I went as far as to the blue, it'd be okay, but it's better if I have a little bit more relation. So I'm going to look for a blue-green amongst my colored pencils here. Okay. And this one's more of like a blue-blue. I don't really see a blue-green in here too much. So, but obviously if I add a blue, oh, this is kind of a blue-green. There we go. But if I add a blue and a green together, I could also make that. You could also stick with just using the green, and that would be perfectly fine too. Okay. So I'm going to use this one. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to start coloring this in on the darker side. So we agree that, again, the top right here is the lightest. So all these tops are going to be the lighter areas. That means that this area here is going to be the second lightest. That means that I want to make sure I'm going right up against that edge. So a lot of times I'll go right against the edges first and color them in. I'm not outlining. I'm just adding the color around the edges first. Okay, and then bringing that color all the way across. Okay, again, you want to make sure that you're kind of blending in those edges so that it looks like it's all nice and in one direction, but you can see how that makes it look really nice and straight. Okay, and then I would do the same thing over here. As well. Okay, now after I have those two sides done, then I can start worrying about the front side of this, because that's going to be the darkest side since our light is coming from back here. Okay, so that would be where I would start to really press in. And I'm really going to press into that. And again, I'm going to make sure I go really carefully along edges because I want to be able to see those nice straight edges on my front shape and on my form. So I'm going to turn this, and that's one of the best ways to work when you're working with color, is to turn your paper so you can always see where you're coloring and where you're not. I think that my cat is about to photobomb again. And this one's a different one. This is my cat the last one was my cat Sindra. This is Tamio. There he is. You can see that he's shuffling my pencils around. He is my kitty. He likes to spend time with me, and he has been taken to since we started being at home, he has taken to following me pretty much everywhere. All right, so you can see that I'm really blending this in. I'm trying to get rid of any outlines I might have. You want to make sure that if you get to a point where your colored pencil is getting really out of lead, that you sharpen it. But remember that with colored pencils, you don't need to sharpen things to a point. You just need to sharpen them until they're usable. So usable basically means, like, for example, like this. Okay, rather than sharpening them to like a sharp point. Because sharp points with colored pencils that are really soft, like they're supposed to be, that means that if you, once you start to try to use it and it has a really sharp point, that sharp point is just going to break. Or you're going to end up with like scribbly lines instead of having a nice shade when you're coloring in. Because you can see that I'm using the side of the colored pencil lead. Okay, so I'm not going to continue doing this because I don't want you to sit there and be like, oh my goodness, she's going to color this entire thing, oh my goodness, forever. But I wanted to show you enough of this so you can see what it's going to be like. The other thing you can do is, remember that we've taken white and you can actually blend. I had a little bit of brown on there, so be careful when you're using your color. You can actually blend using your white. Again, be really careful that you're staying inside those shapes when you do that. And it gives you a nice solid look to it. And again, it really helps to make it look like it's more three-dimensional. And you can even do that on the front of this. And it will still end up looking darker, but it will help to blend those colors in a little bit more. And you notice that I started going in circles. And that helps to blend those colors together more too than if I just go in straight lines. Okay. So again, when you're doing something that is a cylinder, that would mean that you would have to have color going from dark to light and back to dark again. So when you're using a colored pencil, you can, like I said, you can actually use colored pencil, and you can use the pencil with it. So you can actually use both of them together. So say that I wanted to use this dark purple, okay, for my forms that are bursting out from over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to again start along the edges. And I'm going to blend it right into that pencil. The pencil is going to become my shadow. Notice that I started with the pencil first and I added color afterwards. Okay, I can darken up along the edges here. I can really darken up inside. I could also make the inside of my cylinders look a different color if I wanted to. I don't have to keep them that color. Okay, and then if I want to have this top part look lighter, I can actually blend a little bit of white into this. I can clean this off. I'm really getting that white blended in there to make it look more rounded. Okay, so those are some things that you can do to create your three-point perspective, or your three-point perspective, your one-point perspective. There is such a thing as three-point perspective, but we're not doing that yet. So these are some things you can do as far as one-point perspective. Again, you could, if you wanted to, go back in here with something like, I could go in with a blue-violet, because as you can see over here, blue, violet, and violet are near each other, violet being the darkest, but if I pressed in harder, I could actually go with a blue, violet and make the edge even darker over here, like that. So I can blend, just like I did with this one, where I blended more of the colors together, I could blend this in as well. Okay, so this is where you get to start having fun, adding colors to things. And really pumping up like the what makes things interesting. So I'm going to start doing weird things with like whatever this is that's oozing out of here. You know, I could decide to make it multiple colors, or who knows what, because again, this is surreal. It's supposed to be strange and unusual and odd. So have fun with it. If you have questions, please make sure that you drop an email for me, or that you leave a message for me. If I see that there are people who are asking the same questions, and I will make sure that I comment on it and see what I can do to help out the whole group with things that maybe multiple people are having troubles with. And I can also put videos out there for you as well, because that's the easiest when we're working with something that's hands-on and that's visual, like art. Okay? So, have fun, and I look forward to seeing the amazing things that you are going to do with your 1 Point Perspective Surrealist drawing.